Carlos Castano, the boss, killed by his own men. April 16th, 2004, Northern Colombia. Carlos Castano Gil was the founder and public face of the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, known as the AUC. For years, he had commanded tens of thousands of fighters, orchestrating massacres, assassinations, and forced disappearances in the name of fighting guerrillas. But by 2004, he had become a liability. Castano had begun criticizing drug trafficking within the AUC. He publicly admitted involvement in crimes. He spoke to journalists. He hinted at surrender and cooperation with authorities. To the men beneath him, cartel partners, commanders, and even family, he was no longer useful. He was dangerous. On April 16th, Castano was lured into a meeting under the pretense of resolving internal disputes at the Rancho Alhombro farm near Valencia in the department of Córdoba. But it was a trap. At least 20 heavily armed paramilitaries arrived in approximately 8 trucks. They opened fire immediately. Gunshots tore through the area as Castano's small group of bodyguards tried to respond. The attackers had overwhelming numbers and superior firepower. Most of Castano's men were killed in the opening barrage, cut down before they could escape. Castano fought back. He returned fire until he ran out of ammunition. When the shooting stopped, he was still alive, wounded, surrounded, and completely outnumbered. He was captured. Witness testimony and later confessions identified the man who carried it out as Jesus Ignacio Roldan, known as Monaleche. Roldan later admitted his role to Colombian authorities. Before the final shot, Castano asked a single question. Who ordered this? Roldan reportedly answered that he was following orders from Vicente Castano, Carlos's own brother and fellow AUC leader. Moments later, Roldan shot him, twice. Multiple reports described the killing as execution style, with at least one bullet to the head. Carlos Castano was dead. In the days that followed, rumors spread wildly. Some claimed he had been tortured. Others said he had been strangled. For years, the truth remained deliberately obscured. What investigators later confirmed was this: Castano died from gunshot wounds. To erase him, his killers buried his body in a shallow grave near Valencia, Córdoba. His remains have been dismembered and partially incinerated before burial, an effort to prevent identification. For more than 2 years, his disappearance remained unresolved. Then, in September 2006, Monaleche led authorities to the burial site. Forensic teams recovered remains consistent with Castano's disappearance. DNA testing officially confirmed his death. He was ambushed, disarmed, and executed by his own men, on orders from within his inner circle. Erased the same way his organization erased others. Arturo Beltran Leyva, executed and displayed like a trophy. December 16, 2009. Cuernavaca, Morelos, Mexico. Arturo Beltran Leyva, known as El Barbas, had spent years at war with both rival cartels and the Mexican government. Once an ally of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, he had split violently from the Sinaloa cartel and built his own organization through kidnappings, assassinations, and mass executions. In the early evening, Mexican Marines surrounded a luxury apartment complex known as Altitude, a fortified building where Arturo Beltran Leyva was hiding. As the operation began, gunfire erupted from inside the building. Beltran Leyva and his bodyguards were armed with assault rifles and grenades and refused to surrender. The shootout spread across multiple floors, echoing through the surrounding neighborhood. Residents were ordered to stay inside as bullets tore through walls and stairwells. When the shooting stopped, several of Beltran Leyva's gunmen lay dead. Inside one of the rooms, Marines found Arturo Beltran Leyva himself, killed by gunfire, still wearing tactical gear, surrounded by spent shell casings and weapons. He was 37 years old. But what happened next ensured his death would become infamous. After the operation, photos of Beltran Leyva's body were taken by authorities. His corpse was laid out on the floor, shirtless, covered in blood. His face and chest were littered with Mexican peso bills, a deliberate act by Marines meant to symbolize the money-fueled violence he had unleashed on the country. The images were leaked almost immediately. Within hours, they spread across Mexican media and the internet. For the first time, the public saw one of Mexico's most powerful cartel bosses reduced to a lifeless body, displayed like a conquered enemy. The message was unmistakable. The state had killed him, and it wanted the world to know. The reaction was explosive. Human rights groups condemned the display as humiliating and unlawful. The Mexican military opened an internal investigation into the handling of the body. But for many citizens, the photos represented something else. proof that a man who had ordered countless executions had finally been stopped. Beltran Leyva's death sent shockwaves to the criminal underworld. The organization fractured almost immediately. Internal power struggles erupted. Rival cartels moved in to seize territory, and violence surged as alliances collapsed. Heriberto Castano, the cartel boss whose body was stolen, October 7, 2012. Progreso Coahuila, Mexico. Heriberto Castano, known as El Lazca, was the founder and supreme commander of Los Zetas, a cartel infamous for military discipline, extreme brutality, and public terror. A former elite Mexican army officer, Castano had turned his training against the state, building a criminal organization that specialized in massacres, beheadings, and intimidation. By 2012, he was one of Mexico's most wanted men. That afternoon, Mexican Marines and state police responded to reports of armed men at a local soccer field. When officers approached a pickup truck nearby, the occupants opened fire. A gun battle erupted in the streets. 2 gunmen were killed. One of them was Heriberto Castano. Authorities quickly transported the bodies to a local morgue in Sabinas, Coahuila. Forensic teams identified Castano through fingerprints and physical characteristics. The government announced that the elusive Zetas leader was finally dead. But within hours, the situation took a surreal turn. Before a full autopsy could be completed, a group of armed men stormed the morgue. They overpowered staff, smashed open the refrigeration unit, and stole Castano's body. The attackers fled without firing a shot. When officials arrived, the corpse was gone. The theft sent shockwaves through Mexico. Never before had the body of a cartel leader been taken back by his own organization after death. The move was widely interpreted as an attempt to prevent confirmation, preserve his myth, or avoid a public display similar to that of Arturo Beltran Leyva 3 years earlier. Mexican authorities stood by their identification. They released fingerprint records and confirmed that Castano had been killed in the shootout. Despite conspiracy theories fueled by the missing body, officials maintained that the Zetas leader was dead. His organization, however, began to fracture almost immediately. Los Zetas had been built around Castano's authority and military command structure. Without him, internal power struggles erupted. Rival leaders fought for control. Violence intensified as factions splintered and alliances collapsed. For years, Heriberto Castano had ruled through fear, discipline, and spectacle. He trained killers like soldiers and turned public brutality into strategy. He survived arrests, betrayals, and near misses, until a random street encounter brought his reign to an abrupt end. He didn't die in a palace or a bunker. He was shot during a chaotic street gunfight. His death was announced to the nation, and then his body vanished, stolen back into the shadows by the very cartel he created. Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the king who died on the operating table. July 4, 1997, Mexico City, Mexico. Amado Carrillo Fuentes was known as El Señor de los Cielos, the Lord of the Skies. He controlled the Juarez cartel, moved tons of cocaine into the United States, and operated a fleet of private aircraft larger than that of some small airlines. For years, Carrillo Fuentes had outsmarted rivals, corrupted officials, and avoided capture. While other cartel bosses stayed out of sight, he lived openly, protected by money, influence, and fear. But by 1997, pressure was closing in. U.S. and Mexican authorities were tightening the net. A trial was approaching. Rivals were circling. Carrillo Fuentes believed his face had become too recognizable. His solution was drastic. He decided to change it. On July 4th, Carrillo Fuentes checked into a Mexico City clinic to undergo extensive cosmetic surgery, a complex procedure intended to alter his appearance and help him disappear. The operation was meant to give him a new identity. It was long and dangerous. He was placed under deep anesthesia. 2 of his bodyguards were present inside the operating room during the surgery. Carrillo Fuentes never regained consciousness. According to official accounts, he suffered fatal complications during the procedure and died while still under anesthesia. He was 40 years old. The man who controlled fleets of aircraft and armies of gunmen died helpless, surrounded by surgeons and guards instead of power. Mexican authorities announced his death, but doubts spread immediately. No public autopsy was shown. His body was quickly buried under heavy security. Rumors spread that the death had been staged, that Carrillo Fuentes had faked his death to escape justice. The legend of El Señor de los Cielos only grew stronger, but what followed pointed in another direction. The 2 surgeons who performed Carrillo Fuentes' operation were found dead. Their bodies were encased in concrete, sealed inside steel drums, dumped like industrial waste. Investigators reported that the bodies showed clear signs of torture before death. Nearby, a 3rd steel barrel was discovered. Inside was another corpse, mutilated to the same degree, preserved in the same manner. The body was so badly damaged that it could not be identified. Authorities stated it was presumed to be a 3rd doctor involved in the surgery, but the identity was never confirmed. Inside the Juarez cartel, chaos erupted. Without Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the organization fractured. Power struggles exploded between lieutenants and family members. Violence escalated along the border as rivals fought to claim his territory. The empire he had built through precision and control began to collapse. Whether he died from surgical complications or was intentionally eliminated has never been conclusively proven. What is certain is this. After July 4, 1997, Amado Carrillo Fuentes was never seen again. Rodolfo Carrillo Fuentes, executed in a public cinema ambush, September 11, 2004, Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico. Rodolfo Carrillo Fuentes, nicknamed El Niño de Oro, the younger brother of Amado Carrillo Fuentes and a key figure tied to the Juarez cartel network that still carried the family name, stepped out into a public place with his wife in one of Mexico's cartel capitals. No armored convoy, no safe-house walls, just a normal night in the open. That night, gunmen waited near a cinema in Culiacan. As Rodolfo was leaving the theater area, the attackers rushed him and opened fire at close range. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't a message shot, it was an execution carried out in public. He collapsed under the gunfire. His girlfriend was hit and killed beside him. A former police officer, believed to be providing protection, was also shot dead in the ambush. The killers fled immediately, but they didn't get far. Authorities set up roadblocks on highways leading out of the city. Not long after, the gunmen reportedly clashed with police in 2 separate shootouts. 5 of the assailants were killed and 2 were arrested. Within hours, the assassination became more than just another cartel murder. It was interpreted as a direct strike in the ongoing war between Mexico's biggest criminal empires. And one allegation kept surfacing in official and journalistic reporting, that Joaquin El Chapo Guzman had ordered Rodolfo's killing. U.S. congressional research reporting and later courtroom testimony in the Guzman case both describe Rodolfo's murder as one of the killings tied to cartel power struggles of that era. Rodolfo Carrillo Fuentes lived under a famous name and died under a storm of bullets in a public ambush at a cinema in the heart of cartel territory. Killed fast, in front of witnesses, with 2 other people dying beside him. Nazario Moreno, the cartel messiah exposed. March 9, 2014. Apatzingán, Michoacán, Mexico. Nazario Moreno Gonzalez, known as El Chayo, was the spiritual leader of the Knights Templar cartel, a group that ruled Michoacán through religion, fear, and ritualized violence. 4 years earlier, in 2010, Mexican authorities announced that Moreno had been killed in a massive gun battle. But no body was recovered, no photos were released, no proof was shown. Almost immediately, rumors spread that the government was lying. Moreno himself helped fuel the legend. From hiding, he continued issuing orders. He circulated pamphlets and handwritten texts preaching morality, obedience, and divine justice. He demanded prayer from cartel members. He framed executions as punishment from God. In parts of Michoacán, he wasn't just a boss. He was treated like a prophet. To many in Michoacán, he was called El Más Loco, the craziest one, or El Santo, the Holy One. Moreno oversaw kidnappings, extortion, drug trafficking, and mass killings. Entire communities were terrorized under the Knights Templars' rule. Those who disobeyed were beaten, mutilated, or executed, often publicly. By 2014, the illusion was cracking. As armed civilian groups rose up across Michoacán, the Mexican government launched a major offensive against the Knights Templar. On March 9th, federal police and soldiers tracked Moreno to a rural area near Apatzingán. When officers moved in, Moreno didn't surrender. A gunfight erupted in the hills. Shots echoed through the brush. When it ended, Nazario Moreno was dead, killed by gunfire during the confrontation. This time, the government did something different. They recovered the body. They confirmed fingerprints. They released photographs. The images spread quickly, Moreno lying lifeless, unmistakably dead. The state wanted the message to be clear. The Messiah had not risen. He had been hiding. The impact was immediate. Followers who had believed Moreno was immortal were forced to confront reality. The cult-like devotion collapsed. Without its spiritual leader, the Knights Templar fractured almost overnight. Commanders defected, rivals moved in, arrests followed. Nazario Moreno had built power not just with guns, but with belief. He survived for years because people wanted the myth to be true. In the end, there was no miracle, no resurrection, no divine escape.